And I've thought of that more and more, that I'd say Governors Milliken, Williams, Phil Hart, Pat McNamara wanted to be elected, but they didn't have to be. You and I can name some that have to be elected and put that first. Another interesting one was in Nevada on the recount there. And let's see, the fellow, I'm trying to think of the very conservative senator from there.
McCarran?
McCarran. And I made some crack about McCarran. This fellow was the head of ADA, the Liberal Democrats. Said, well, don't talk about it that way. I said, well, how come? Well, what he'd done, see, Nevada didn't have a law school, so he wanted to be a lawyer. His daddy said, you go down to Senator McCarran's office, just sit there till you see him, tell him you want to be a lawyer. He did. So McCarran said, fine, you're from Nevada. Then he got him a job running elevators. You've seen those elevators that are kind of hidden away and lost. Bobby Baker made the assignment of elevators, so assigned him to one where he ran the elevator but could study all day. Then they'd come back and McCarran would get his people appointed as county prosecutors. Now, Nevada county prosecutor is a pretty big thing. So that was really the basis, I think, for the machine, was not his conservative approach. I was on a possible recount for East in North Carolina, Jesse Helms' protege. And, you know, you get to know a lot of things when you're going on a recount. And they got around that he shouldn't have got any votes in the black community because of his racial position. He got a big chunk because the tobacco industry hired a lot of African Americans at good wages. So that I think Jesse Helms' base is not necessarily his right-wing thinking as it is the tobacco industry and the jobs that come out of it. So they're fascinating recounts, a lot of them.
A couple of other things I want to talk to you about relate to your involvement in trying to stop the Lyndon LaRouche faction from taking over
this was fascinating.
Some Democratic Party activities.
Lyndon LaRouche, you may know, is a real, well, shall I say, nut. He'd been a socialist, a Trotskyite, you name it. So he wanted to invade the Democratic Party. And sure enough, they ran against incumbents, John Dingell, Levin, had thousands of excess petitions. And people, most of them gave up. Not John Dingell. He's a tiger. He wanted me to check it out. So I got, you know, Dennis Gilliland, the statistician at MSU. We went over the signatures where they were, and they could not physically have been done because you would have had the person to get maybe 1,000 the same day in Flint, Grand Rapids, Detroit, Traverse City. So we did some checking and found out what happened. He had his person that was an attorney from Flint that ran for U.S. Senate, I forget his name. He'd go into a shopping mall, and they'd have 10 LaRouches from maybe Chicago and New York. And they'd go around, I mean, they really were effective. They'd say, sign here to lower your taxes. So then, this fellow would sign saying they'd been done in his presence. Well, we got a subpoena, and Bransdorfer, the former state bar president, Republican, you know, and Mike Pine, Democrat, they didn't want people monkeying around with the election laws. Now, it would have helped the Republicans to have LaRouche on. It just would have made confusion, but Bransdorfer just, you know, didn't want the laws used that way. So we had the hearing. I remember the one part, is Bill Ford's secretary had the petition, and I asked this fellow, can you see it being signed? It was 20 feet away. And he said, oh, yeah, yes. I said, well, now, and I didn't coach her. I said, what did you have? He said, a ballpoint pen, but it wasn't open. Well, then they took the position there was a presumption of irregularity instead of regularity. That went into federal court before Horace Gilmore in the Court of Appeals, and it did knock out the LaRouche group.
Tom, I've got a couple of personal questions I want to ask you. One thing that a lot of people don't know about Tom Downs is that you're a clown.
Well,
Tell us how you got into clowning.
Well, somebody said, who's that clown that thinks he's a lawyer, that lawyer that thinks he's a clown? Well, my wife got me in it. She was working with the North Lansing group, but I've enjoyed it a lot. I just did one last week. One of the secretaries, her 7-year-old twins were having a party, and I do the young kids. I like them a lot.
Some of the other activities you've been involved in, I know personally, you teach at Cooley Law School,
Yes,
a legislation class and an election law class. But another area that you've done some extensive activity in is travel.
Yeah,
Tell us about some of your world travel.
I've learned a lot on that one. That I took my 15-year-old grandson down to the Amazon basin in Ecuador, and we spent 2 weeks with a tribe. The contact was a son of a missionary. He went to MSU, and MSU wasn't ready for him. He married into the tribe. And here were people, they had no shoes, no written language, no radio, no television, and no alarm clocks and no refrigerators. Well, the babies were breastfed on demand. And if a kid was fussing about something, the nearest adult pick it up and jiggle it. In fact, my 15-year-old grandson, see a kid fuss, pick it up, jiggle it, be all right. Then you talk about bonding. The mothers would have the baby bare to their body with kind of a cloth around it, and they'd be fishing with the baby right there. Well, what amazed me was here the latest thing in Dr. Spock and all, demand feeding, breastfeeding, bond. Well, here were these people with no education doing, and I think the child for the first year, if they didn't get a disease, were probably, I didn't see any children crying there. They didn't have to wait. That mothers at one time were told you have to wait, feed the kids every 4 hours and get them in the habit of waiting because they'll get them used to waiting in line for unemployment comp or whatever.
Tom, one of your future plans, I know, is to take one or more of your grandchildren on the Silk Route.
Yeah. Well, I think as time's gone on, while I was in a lot of vigorous fights, it's more and more enjoying the family, the children. Betty, my wife, allowed to travel with me, and the grandchildren, and just enjoy that type of thing more and more. We had a delightful week in Alaska with my 18-year-old granddaughter and her aunt, my youngest daughter. And I do want to plan to do this silk train from Beijing to the Caspian Sea, and also go down again up the Amazon on a boat trip there. And I just enjoying life a lot, and I want to do more and more travel. I still work I don't work 9 days a week now, but I still go to the office regularly.
Tom, you've had a remarkable career, and you've got a bunch of great stories that you've told us. Thanks a lot.
Okay, well, thank you, Bob.